This is MTG Burgeoning, and in this video we are going to update and upgrade our Saskia the Unyielding Creature Tokens Matter EDH deck. Thank you for joining us for another installment of the Up and Up series. Today we are updating and upgrading Saskia the Unyielding. This is a 4-color Creature Tokens Matter EDH deck. And if you are unfamiliar with this build, you can look in the description below of this video, and you can find a link to this deck's deck tech, this deck's deck list, and this deck's video primer series. We have a handful of cards going in, which means a handful of cards are coming out, all of which are meant to make Saskia the Unyielding even less yielding. Oh, if only I wouldn't have stumbled at the very end, that would have been a sweet line. All right, here we go, folks. Card number 1 for Saskia today. Oh, you saw something shiny there. I know you did. Card number 1, it is War Leader's Call. Here we have an enchantment for 1 in Boros colors. It acts as part Anthem. It acts as part Impact Tremors. What do those things mean? Well, of course, an Anthem will give creatures we control +1/+1, and Impact Tremors is whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. That's what War Leader's Call does. So, for the purposes of, updating and upgrading, if you have Boros colors in a build and it is a creature token deck and Impact Tremors is already a part of that 99, well, I think War Leader's Call is going to be a great card to replace Impact Tremors, because all you're doing is adding 1 white mana to give creatures you control +1/+1. So what card are we going to replace? Well, of course, we're going to replace Impact Tremors. For just 1 additional white mana that War Leader's Call has, we're going to give creatures we control +1/+1 and still deal the 1 point of damage whenever one of those creatures enters our side of the battlefield. That was a very easy swap. Card number 2, and we're trying to keep that last card as concealed as we possibly can, so much so that, actually, you know what? We'll get to it. All right, card number 2 is, here we go. Not 100% sold on Vrestin yet, but we're going to give it a whirl and see how it performs in this build. Here we have a 0/0 flying creature for X, 2 green and a white. Vrestin enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, and we are not intimidated by the X, of course, because, well, we have a lot of ways to generate big-time mana in this build. When Vrestin comes into play, we create X 1/1 green and white alien insect creature tokens with flying, and whenever we attack with 1 or more insects, we put a +1/+1 counter on each of them. So we do have the means in this deck to drop Vrestin into play, have the insects come into play as well, depending on what X is, swing for game-ending combat just based upon the amount of mana that we can generate in this build and the ability to give our creatures haste. Remember, each one of the creatures that are attacking that are insects are going to get a +1/+1 counter on them. So, whenever you attack with 1 or more, put a +1. Oh, wait, that's not the same. Oh, that's put a +1/+1 counter with 1. Oh, I guess I misread this card. Okay, so what we're looking at here, instead of it's whenever you attack with an insect, put a +1/+1 counter on each insect you control is what I was thinking it was going to be. Here, it's whenever you attack with 1 or more. Oh, so if you attack with 5 insects, you're only getting a +1/+1 counter on each of them. You're not getting 5 +1/+1 counters. That may change. Wow, we're already kind of invested in making this swap. Let's see what happens. We don't necessarily need the +1/+1 counters to win. Just generating more 1/1s with a creature that comes into play with evasion that gets the same number of +1/+1 counters on it, that might still be good enough for inclusion in this deck. Let's let's roll with Vreston for now, and during gameplay, if Vreston underperforms or is underwhelming, then we'll be back here for another episode of the Up and Up series. Saskia may be less yielding of that than first thought. Alright, so Vreston is going in. It's going to replace Raise the Alarm. Here is just an instant spell, 1/1 white mana to create 2 1/1 white soldiers. We're hoping that the influx of mana here helps to give us a bigger bang for our mana investing buck. I guess we'll see when we get to gameplay whether Vreston can fit that bill. All right, card number 3 that's going into play. I'm sorry, it's not going into play. It's eventually going to be into play. Oh, yeah, you saw that, right? Yeah, the Temple of Civilization, Foily, is sitting right there just waiting to be talked about. It's the last card of this video, so before we get to that, let's talk about the Moonshaker Cavalry. Here is White's answer to the Craterhoof Behemoth, who actually is in the 99 of this build. Here we have a 6/6 flying Spirit Knight for 5 and 3 white mana, and when Moonshaker Cavalry comes into play, creatures we control gain flying and get +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the number of creatures we control. This is a game ender. This is a win condition, particularly in a build that wants to make creature tokens like nobody's business. So if we get Moonshaker Cavalry down onto the battlefield, it should most likely be good game. With a new creature-specific with a new creature-specific win condition going into the 99, a weaker, less reliable, less dependent on creatures win condition card must come out, and that is going to be Comet Storm. Comet Storm is an instant with multi-kicker of 1. It's X and 2 red to cast, and we may pay an additional 1 generic mana any times we choose when we cast the spell. And then we choose target creature or player, and we just pretty much choose any target. And then we choose another target creature or player for each time we kicked Comet Storm, and it deals X damage to each of them. We talked about earlier the ability to generate some big-time mana in this build. Well, we usually like to generate that big-time mana into a game-ending direct damage spell like Comet Storm. But here, in order to get that big mana, some of the times we have to sacrifice our creature tokens to do so. Well, we're going to see how it shapes out with Moonshaker Cavalry replacing the direct damage spell, and although we do lose the potential win condition here with direct damage, we do gain another potential win condition through combat with the Cavalry. We'll see how that shakes out, and whether or not being less versatile with our win conditions in our creature-based deck is going to be a good thing or a not-so-good thing. All right, card number 4, the last card going into this build today. You already know it. If you know the card on the back side, then you're going to know the front side. Here we have Ohertak, Deepest Foundation. We have a 6/6 Vigilant God for 4 and 2 white mana. If one or more creature tokens would be created under our control, 3 times that many of those creatures are created instead. This deck is a creature token deck. We've already demonstrated throughout the lifetime of this Saskia build. It has been through its ups and downs, and it's been through its valleys and peaks. We have centered ourselves on a creature token based build, and Ohertak is going to be a massive enhancement of all of those creature tokens. Every time they come into play, we're putting 3 of them into play instead. Even better, when Ohertak dies, we return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. So if it's destroyed or made to be sacrificed or X or -X, we don't have to worry about it staying in the graveyard. It comes back as Temple of Civilization. It is a land that taps to add 1 white mana, or we can pay 2 generic mana and 1 white mana to tap it to transform the temple, but we can only activate that ability if we control... we can only activate that ability if we attack with at least 3 creatures this turn, and only as a sorcery. Again, in a deck that prides itself on creating creature tokens, attacking with at least 3 of them should be easier than Sunday morning. So that means that with the built-in protection that Ohertak has, we should be able to keep it on our side of the battlefield, and we should be able to reap the benefits of creating triple the creature tokens each time we create them. Ohertak may have the biggest impact of any of the cards in this video, and it may be the biggest and most impactful card we've ever added to the Saskia build. With Ohertak going in, it's going to replace Call the Copper Coats. Here we get an instant for 2 and 1 white mana with the Strive mechanic, and the Strive cost was 1 and 1 white mana. So we chose any number of target opponents, and then we created X 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, where X is the number of creatures those opponents controlled. And of course, if we strived it, then we could pick any number of opponents as long as we paid 1 and white mana for each of those additional opponents. The problem here is, even though we are a super focused creature token deck, all of our opponents may not always share that vision. They may not be playing with creature-centric builds, and that means that Call the Copper Coats, well, that's going to hurt us because we cannot pick ourselves when we are creating these 1/1 human soldier creature tokens. It's only choosing our opponents. Well, let's be a little more proactive as opposed to being a little more, I don't know, holding on to your lucky rabbit's foot or 7-leaf clover. Let's put Ohertak in the spot of creating some creature tokens and not risk it by chance. All right, there you have it, MTG BC. 4 new cards going into our Saskia build. Let me know your thoughts about these additions in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, a channel for all things Magic.